Did Al Capone's men really move liquor through secret tunnels beneath Chicago? Picture the city after midnight. Rain has darkened the pavement beside Lake Michigan, and every street lamp lays a pale oval across the stone. Somewhere below, an amber line begins to move inland on an old map. Tonight, as you settle into sleep, we will follow that line slowly. You can let the smaller details drift past whenever you like. The city will keep the path for you. I'm Elias. Subscribe for more strange history carried gently into the quiet hours of your night. Where would such a hidden route begin? How could a heavy crate pass from a dark passage into an ordinary storefront? And if armed checkpoints and concealed levers once guarded the way, what trace should they have left behind? For a moment, allow the imagined map to remain complete. Its first section follows the black edge of the lake where water and city meet. Then it slips beneath the crowded avenues through brick, clay, soot, and the low glow of electric lamps. At intervals, a steel-edged opening seems to rise into a basement. Above it, a bar looks quiet and legitimate. Below it, the imagined traffic continues without headlights, without street noise, and without the curious eyes of anyone passing the front door. It is an elegant story. Every inconvenience of the illegal liquor trade appears to have an architectural answer. The lake offers arrival, while the tunnel offers concealment. The basement provides storage, and the storefront supplies a respectable face. And somewhere in the darkness, the name Al Capone seems to bind the whole machine together. But our map has three kinds of line. A solid line will mark a structure or use that can be documented. A dotted line will mark a possibility that remains unproved. And whenever a claimed connection reaches farther than its support, the pencil will lift from the page. Nothing dramatic will happen when it lifts. There will be only the soft sound of graphite ending and a little more open paper than the legend expected. You need not remember every street or date. The journey is arranged as a series of physical tests. We will descend into Chicago's genuine freight tunnels and ask what their cars carried. We will trace their northern limit. We will open the famous hatch behind the Green Mill Bar, pass through its real basement rooms, and meet the concrete wall that waits beyond them. Then we will lay Capone's surviving paper trail beside the route and see whether the two ever touch. The first surprise is that this investigation does not begin with an empty hole in the ground. Chicago truly built a hidden commercial city beneath the loop. Capone truly earned illicit income from an alcohol business during Prohibition. And old Chicago buildings truly contain cellars, hatches, vaults, and connected rooms. Those facts make the legend feel almost inevitable. Yet three true things do not automatically become a fourth. A tunnel can exist without carrying liquor. A basement can connect to another basement without belonging to a criminal highway. A famous bootlegger can operate in a city without owning every dark passage later assigned to him. So we will move gently, one object at a time. First comes a railway and its cargo list, then a map boundary, a hatch, and a doorway. Finally, we meet a wall and a federal file. By the end, the amber line will look different. Some of it will remain, though not in the form we first imagined. Some of it will fade. And beneath the sleeping streets, another hidden city will appear, quieter than the legend, more practical, and in its own way more astonishing. The rain continues above us. The pencil rests beside the map. And now, at the edge of the loop, a small electric railway is waiting about 40 feet below the pavement. Begin with the map still spread beneath the lamplight. Lake Michigan fills the right side of the page in a flat field of blue-gray. The river turns inland. The loop holds its familiar rectangle of streets in elevated track. Farther north, well beyond downtown, a small mark identifies the Green Mill. If someone asked you to design a secret Prohibition route from imagination alone, these points would tempt the hand. Water, city center, famous nightclub. The pencil would want to join them. That urge is part of the story. A hidden highway offers a pleasing kind of order. It gives a single answer to a messy logistical problem. Illegal alcohol is bulky. Bottles clink and barrels take space. Trucks use public roads where drivers can be watched. A delivery entering a known speakeasy can reveal the destination as clearly as a sign above the door. A tunnel seems to solve all of this at once. It also gives the city a second shape. Chicago above ground belongs to clerks, shoppers, streetcars, offices, theaters, and apartment windows. Chicago below ground belongs to the story, guarded doors, coded signals, silent carts, and a route known only to the organization controlling it. That division is so vivid that it can feel remembered even when we first encounter it in a later retelling. Yet the map asks a practical favor. Each segment must have a location. Each connection must meet a building. Each delivery must move through an opening. Each opening must belong to a structure with a date and a purpose. A route is more than a sequence of atmospheric rooms. It is continuity. Imagine carrying a crate along our amber line. At the lakefront, you need a point where cargo leaves a vessel or vehicle and enters the underground. Beneath the city, you need a passage wide and stable enough to continue. At every change in direction, the crate needs labor, equipment, or another vehicle. Near the destination, it needs a shaft, stair, hatch, or doorway into a particular building. If guards control the traffic, they need places to stand, a reason to be there, and some trace in testimony, property evidence, police files, court material, or contemporary reporting. This does not make a secret operation easy to find. Secrecy aims to leave fewer records, but a citywide physical system is also hard to make weightless. Brick, concrete, steel, earth, property boundaries, fires, renovations, utility work, and later investigations all have a way of preserving fragments. Our first line, therefore, remains provisional. Beside it, place 3 separate cards. The first says, Real Underground Freight Railway. The second says, Real Illicit Alcohol Income Associated with Al Capone. The third says, Real Cellars and Connected Basement Spaces in Old Commercial Buildings. The proposed highway sits in the empty space among them. That empty space is not yet a verdict. It is the precise place where the episode must work. The question is whether the cards can be joined by more than familiarity and proximity. The freight railway provides the strongest possible beginning because it is not folklore. It was an engineered network with known commercial purposes. If a broad subterranean artery stood ready for covert reuse, this is the system most likely to give the story physical substance. So fold the upper portion of the map away for now. Leave the green mill beyond the edge. Let the lake become only a pale margin. Center the paper on downtown, where streets press close and buildings rise above crowded sidewalks. Then imagine the surface becoming transparent. Beneath the wagons, streetcars, shops, hotels, newspaper buildings, offices, and freight houses, another grid takes shape. It is not a gangster kingdom. It is a railway built to make ordinary commerce disappear from the street. The pencil touches down again, this time on a line we can keep. The descent is longer than a cellar stair. Go down past foundation walls and utility spaces, past the shallow world of coal rooms and sidewalk vaults, until the street above feels remote. At roughly 40 feet below downtown, the city's noise softens into a more regular mechanical rhythm. This is the level of Chicago's freight tunnel railway, operating by 1906. Here, the hidden city is real. Its small electric locomotives do not need smoke or steam. They pull narrow cars along rails beneath the commercial district. Switches divide the route into branches. At receiving points, workers manage loads that the crowded surface streets would otherwise have to absorb. The tunnel is not grand in the manner of a passenger station. Its wonder comes from repetition, car after car, junction after junction, building after building, all organized below people who may rarely think about what is under their shoes. The scale can be difficult to hold in the mind. A company report from 1910 described nearly 60 miles of track. It listed 22 freight house connections and 45 connections with commercial buildings. Those figures belong to the operator's own account and should be heard as a period claim rather than a modern survey, but they show the ambition of the machine. Nearly 60 miles is the kind of number that invites a legend. A few blocks of tunnel could serve one building. A network described in dozens of miles seems capable of serving a second city. Add brick walls, dim lamps, electric motors, and unseen branches, and almost any later cargo begins to feel possible. But spend a little time with the workers rather than the atmosphere. An operator has a route to follow. A freight crew has cars to position. A building receiver waits for a load to arrive at a usable interface. Every hidden mile exists because something on the surface needs to move. The network is secret only in the loose sense that most people above do not see it. Commercially, it is a system of scheduled obligations. A crate entering the tunnel does not become invisible to everyone. It becomes part of a chain of labor. Someone receives the load, then records or sorts it. Another worker moves the car and transfers the cargo at its destination. A motor, a track, a switch, a shaft, and a doorway each solve one section of the journey. The physical darkness may look clandestine, but the operation itself is structured. That difference matters for our Capone map. The legend asks us to treat underground space as if hidden from the street meant hidden from all oversight. Yet an operating railway has its own community of eyes. Ordinary work fills it. Repeated traffic leaves operational descriptions. Connections are valuable because buildings know about them, use them, and pay for the services they provide. This does not make isolated misuse unimaginable. Any large transport system may carry an item that never appears in its proudest descriptions. The important distinction is between an undocumented incident and an organized standard route. Our episode is testing a highway, a repeatable Capone-linked network from arrival to destination. The real railway gives us structure, scale, and opportunity. It has not yet given us the promised cargo. Stand beside one of the narrow cars and let the motor settle. The air is cool. The walls hold the dull residue of years of work. Above, a department store or office building receives the day without seeing the train below. Ahead, a freight clerk opens a list. If the tunnel was a bootlegger artery, the cargo is where the first unmistakable pulse should appear. A cargo list is one of history's quietest objects. It is none of the drama of a trapdoor and none of the mystery of a sealed corridor. It exists to make unusual things ordinary. Parcels are counted and merchandise is assigned. Coal moves inward while ash moves outward. The list reduces a busy city to categories that can be loaded, carried, received, and repeated. Those are the cargoes emphasized in surviving descriptions of the freight tunnel operation. Packages and merchandise, coal for buildings, and ash removed from them. The pattern makes practical sense. Downtown businesses receive more small freight than a sidewalk can comfortably handle. Large buildings need fuel. Furnaces produce waste. Streets already crowded with vehicles gain room when some of this movement takes place underneath. The tunnel railway is an answer to congestion and building service, not merely an empty corridor waiting for a more exciting purpose. The expected liquor cargo is absent from the standard descriptions. That absence should be used carefully. A list of normal traffic is not a magical inventory of every object that ever entered every car. It cannot turn an undocumented, isolated act into an impossibility. But it does tell us what the system said it was for, what work it performed repeatedly, and which loads shaped its interfaces. For the highway legend, that is consequential. A city-wide bootlegger route would need more than a bottle hidden among parcels. It would need recurring access, willing or controlled labor, destinations connected to the network, and a method for transferring substantial loads without disrupting the ordinary commercial operation. The bigger the claimed flow, the more often these requirements would repeat. Return to the freight platform. A car of coal does not need secrecy. It needs a chute or lift and a building ready to burn it. A car of ash needs the reverse journey. Parcels need sorting and delivery to a known receiver. Each cargo has a visible relationship with the architecture above. Now place an imagined liquor crate beside them. Where is it recorded? Who receives it? Which connected building is its destination? How does it leave the railway level? Does it share an ordinary freight interface, or does it require the concealed lever and steel trapdoor promised by later stories? The object has made the question smaller and more useful. We are no longer asking whether liquor could exist underground in the broadest sense. Almost anything can be carried into a basement. We are asking whether the proposed operation appears in the known purpose, routes, or building connections of this particular railway. So far, the solid line marks ordinary freight. That may feel like a reduction, but it gives us a better view of how hidden Chicago actually worked. The tunnel was not impressive because it carried forbidden goods. It was impressive because it carried necessary goods while the surface forgot about them. Coal entered buildings that needed heat. Ash left buildings that had burned it. Merchandise arrived near the people who would sort and sell it. The network translated a horizontal railway into vertical service. And that vertical transition is exactly where the bootlegger story becomes most tactile. The dot passage alone cannot stock a bar. The load must rise. It must cross a property boundary. It must enter a room where someone can open it, store it, and carry it farther. The freight system did this every day through engineered connections. They were not hidden levers in the cinematic sense. They were more interesting than that, loading docks turned downward, built into the ordinary anatomy of commerce. Imagine a downtown building as a vertical machine. At street level, its doors serve workers, shoppers, hotel guests, or office clerks. Higher floors receive people by stair and elevator. Behind the public rooms are service spaces where heat, waste, packages, food, paper, and equipment enter the life of the building. Now extend that service world beneath the basement. The freight railway connected with buildings through practical interfaces, rail links, chutes, shafts, elevators, and receiving areas. A load could leave a tunnel car and move upward without crossing the crowded sidewalk outside. This was not architectural deception in the criminal sense. It was architectural efficiency. The coal chute provides the simplest picture. Gravity can carry material down or guide a transfer towards storage. An elevator or lift can raise merchandise. A shaft creates a controlled vertical path. A freight house gathers loads for sorting before they travel farther. Each tool answers the same question. How does the hidden horizontal network touch the stacked rooms of the city? For someone hearing a tunnel legend decades later, these interfaces can easily change costume. A receiving hatch becomes a secret trapdoor. A freight lift becomes a concealed platform. A service switch becomes a hidden lever. A porter waiting at a scheduled connection becomes a shadowy guard. The objects remain recognizable while their documented purpose fades. That transformation is especially easy because legitimate service architecture is designed to stay away from the public face of the building. Customers do not need to see the ash route, the coal room, or the freight shaft. Concealment from the lobby is simply good building management. Stand with a building receiver at tunnel level. A car arrives. The worker checks the load and directs it toward the correct interface. There is no need for whispered passwords. The building itself supplies authorization. The connection exists because the property participates in the system. This gives our map a firmer standard. If a storefront or nightclub received repeated tunnel shipments, the most useful clue would not be a dramatic object by itself. It would be a documented connection between the underground system and that property, or a physical path whose date and direction can be followed into it. The company once described dozens of commercial building connections. Those are solid marks. They show that the railway could make a quick transition from dark tunnel to legitimate structure. But they do not turn every basement hatch in Chicago into part of that same network. Depth, location, and ownership all matter here. A doorway at one underground level may have no relation to a railway much farther below. Two passages can cross on the map while remaining separated by earth and concrete. A basement beneath a bar can be real without reaching a freight line. An old steel edge can survive without remembering who used it. This is where the claimed citywide highway must leave general possibility and enter geography. The Green Mill is not a vague destination. It is a particular building in Uptown, far north of the center of the loop. Its association with Capone-era Chicago gives the tunnel story a famous doorway. If the downtown freight network reached it, the map should show a continuous path, or at least a plausible branch extending into that district. So return to the period route. Follow the verified branches north, beneath the commercial city. Let each solid segment remain visible. Pass block after block, but do not let familiarity pull the pencil farther than the system goes. The question is simple now. Where does the real map stop? The solid route moves north through downtown, then ends at Superior Street. That boundary is easy to overlook because the phrase Chicago tunnels encourages the mind to treat the city as one connected underground place. But Chicago stretches for miles along the lake. Superior Street lies near the northern edge of the central commercial district. The Green Mill stands much farther north in Uptown. Between them is not a small missing doorway. It is a substantial distance across the city. Place both points on the same map. The freight network's documented northern reach sits below. The nightclub sits above, separated by neighborhood after neighborhood. The amber line that joined them in the opening now becomes dotted, then stops. This is the first major reversal. The strongest genuine tunnel system under Chicago does not provide a route to the Green Mill. Its existence made the story sound plausible, but its geography limits that plausibility. A railway under the loop cannot serve as a continuous passage to an uptown basement unless another supported connection bridges the distance. The map gives no such bridge. That result changes the shape of the investigation. We're no longer tracing one system from downtown into the club. We are examining two separate places, a documented freight railway in the central city and a set of real below-grade spaces beneath a famous bar. Separate does not mean uninteresting. In fact, the separation allows us to see why the Green Mill story is so durable. The club supplies everything the downtown railway lacks as a legend. It has atmosphere, longevity, a surviving interior, an association with the Prohibition era, and physical features visitors can point toward. A map in an archive feels distant. A hatch behind a bar can be touched. The mind naturally tries to restore the missing line. Perhaps it suggests there was another tunnel. Perhaps the freight system was only one piece. Perhaps a private passage continued beyond the mapped limit. Those possibilities must become specific before they can carry historical weight. Where did the passage run, and which properties would it cross? How deep was it, when was it built, and where did it enter the club? A long private tunnel beneath many blocks would be a significant construction, not a short opening through a shared basement wall. It would meet foundations, utilities, property lines, soil, water, and later building work. The claim grows harder, not easier, as the distance increases. So the route map performs a useful act of kindness. It relieves the Green Mill hatch of having to explain the whole city. We can study the hatch for what it is. Fold the downtown map along Superior Street. Put it aside without erasing the real railway. Then move north on the surface, past the streets the tunnel never reached until the Green Mill's sign and facade come into view. The room above ground carries layers of Chicago memory. Its booths, bar, stage, and dim light have hosted countless stories. Capone's name is among the strongest, drawn toward any secluded corner like iron toward a magnet. Behind the bar is the object at the center of the next test, a steel-edged hatch. It looks like the beginning of a secret. But an opening has two histories, the story told above it and the room waiting below. The hatch opens downward. Below it is not a platform for a small underground train. It is basement storage. That destination is ordinary enough to feel almost disappointing until you remember how much of a working bar depends on ordinary storage. Bottles, supplies, cleaning materials, furniture, equipment, and the accumulated objects of a long-lived business all need space beyond the public room. A hatch can be useful without belonging to a citywide criminal system. Its date also matters. The Green Mill suffered a fire in 1933 after national prohibition had ended. The hatch may belong to rebuilding associated with that later episode. The chronology is not certain enough to turn the feature into a precise artifact of one renovation, but it is strong enough to disturb the easiest assumption. Old-looking does not automatically mean Capone era. Metal darkens as wood wears and basement masonry gathers dust. The feature installed after the dry years can acquire the appearance of deep antiquity, especially in a room already surrounded by period atmosphere. Descend slowly in imagination. The public music and conversation above become muffled. Shelves and stored objects replace the glamour of the bar. The ceiling is low. Light catches pipework, wall surfaces, and the edges of adjoining rooms. Nothing here needs to be invented. The physical space is already suggestive. Now ask what the hatch itself proves. It proves that the bar has an opening to its basement. It may show how staff moved between levels or passed objects into storage. It proves that a concealed-looking transition can sit inside a legitimate business. It does not identify the freight tunnel system as its source. The depth is different. The downtown route is far away. No solid mapped line arrives beneath it. The hatch is therefore a real clue to building function and a weak clue to a Capone highway. That distinction can be surprisingly satisfying. A physical object no longer has to carry every story told about it. Freed from the impossible burden of connecting lakefront, loop, and uptown, it becomes part of a smaller and more believable history. How an old entertainment venue organized its service spaces, changed after damage, and preserved features whose meanings shifted over time. Yet the basement contains more than one room. Doorways connect portions of the commercial block. Corridors can run behind or beneath adjoining storefront units. This kind of horizontal connection creates another powerful impression. A visitor passes through one opening, then another, and feels the public city disappearing above. It is easy to replace the modest distance already traveled with a much longer imagined route. Connected basements deserve their own examination because they are common raw material for urban legends. Buildings change tenants as walls open and close while storage expands. Shared utility access may be useful. Adjoining businesses may create passages for work that was practical at the time and mysterious later. A doorway can outlast the agreement or need that created it. At the Green Mill, the route can be followed through actual spaces. It proceeds farther than the hatch, which is important, but it does not proceed indefinitely. Ahead waits not a secret station or guarded checkpoint, but the blunt clarity of a concrete foundation. A doorway between two basement units can feel like the first segment of a tunnel. You step through one property boundary without returning to the street. The room behind you belongs to one storefront. The room ahead once served another. If several openings align, the sequence begins to resemble a corridor. Add darkness and a famous name, and ordinary circulation becomes an escape route. The Green Mill basement contains this kind of suggestive architecture. Investigators have examined doorways linking storefront spaces. They have followed the direction in which the legend wants to travel. And toward the theater side, they have met a concrete foundation that blocks further passage. The wall gives the corridor an honest ending. It does not announce that no person ever passed through any opening in an earlier arrangement. Buildings are altered and a present wall can postdate a previous room. But the examined structure does not reveal a long surviving tunnel toward a distant destination. It reveals neighboring basement spaces shaped by the changing needs of a commercial block. This is where language quietly enlarges a place. Call each opening a basement doorway and the scale remains local. Call the sequence a corridor and it feels longer. Call it a tunnel and the mind supplies depth, secrecy, and distance. Call it Capone's tunnel and the architecture acquires an owner without gaining a new brick. The words may change faster than the building. Stand before the concrete for a moment. It is not a dramatic sealed vault. It is part of the theater foundation, a structural fact that refuses to perform. The wall does not care which story brought us to it. It simply occupies the route. Our map now has a second endpoint. The first was Superior Street, where the downtown freight system stopped. The second is here, where the basement path toward the theater meets concrete. Between these endpoints lies a large unverified space that atmosphere alone cannot bridge. This is also the moment to separate several underground things that often share one name. A freight tunnel sits far below the street and carries rail traffic. A sidewalk vault extends beneath public pavement beside a building. The basement occupies the lowest floor of a private structure. A passage between adjoining basements crosses a local property boundary. Transit tunnels and storm infrastructure belong to still other systems. All may be underground. All may contain brick, concrete, pipes, steel doors, or dim light. Yet their functions, depths, owners, dates, and routes differ. When later memory calls all of them tunnels, connections appear that builders never made. The green mill spaces remain historically valuable. They show how easily a legitimate commercial building can contain hidden-looking movement. They explain how a crate might pass from one room to another, away from public view. And they give oral tradition a durable set of props. What they do not provide is the missing long route. For that, the story turns from masonry to attribution. Capone's name is not a vague piece of atmosphere. His business and legal history produced records. Federal investigators reconstructed illicit income. Courts dealt with his tax case. Newspapers and later historians examine his operations. If a specific underground itinerary belongs to him, the paper trail is the next place it might surface. Leave the concrete wall behind, return upstairs, and let the music fade. On a quiet table, replace the basement key with a federal file. Paper is less cinematic than brick, but it can be more exact. Al Capone's association with illegal alcohol is not a decorative legend attached to an innocent businessman. Federal records and the tax evasion case establish illicit income within the criminal enterprise that profited during Prohibition. The dry law made manufacture, sale, transportation, importation, and exportation of beverage alcohol part of the legal struggle. Moving the product was inseparable from the business. This is the firm historical ground beneath the famous name. But a record proving income does not automatically prove a route. Financial reconstruction can show that money came from illicit activity without identifying every vehicle, door, warehouse, or delivery path used to produce it. That difference is easy to lose because Capone has become a kind of narrative owner of Prohibition, Chicago. Once his name enters a story, nearby crimes, buildings, rooms, and tunnels drift toward him. The strength of the general association begins to stand in for evidence about a specific act. Our investigation asks for narrower objects, a route segment with an address, a property connection, a shipment ledger, a witness who identifies an underground handoff, a police or court record describing guards below ground, a contemporary article that places Capone's organization inside the tunnel system for a concrete purpose. Two detailed modern investigations pursued the Green Mill Tunnel story and found no primary documentary foundation for a specific Capone-used route there. That is not proof that every undocumented incident is impossible. It is a boundary on what can responsibly be narrated as known. The targeted search has been made, the famous claim has been isolated, and the needed supporting record has not emerged. The missing route matters more than a missing decorative detail. A citywide highway with checkpoints would be in operation. It would coordinate space, labor, access, and repeated movement. If it carried the enormous value sometimes assigned to it, the system would become central to logistics rather than incidental. One might expect it to appear somewhere in the abundant attention devoted to Capone's business, his finances, law enforcement rivalries, properties, or later claims by participants. Instead, the paper proves the business and remains silent about the itinerary. Listen to what that separation gives us. Capone no longer needs to vanish from the episode simply because the tunnel story weakens. His illicit alcohol income explains why Chicago needed hidden storage, discreet deliveries, distributed selling, and many layers of protection. It establishes the pressure that makes concealed architecture attractive. What changes is the shape of the answer. A single underground highway is a centralized solution. It has a beginning, a controlled route, and destinations tied to its access points. A city-wide illegal market may work very differently. It can spread risk across water routes, roads, vehicles, local production, warehouses, service entrances, backrooms, cellars, and many cellars. That plural system is harder to draw as one glowing line. It is also harder to stop. If one driver is watched, another route remains. If one storage site is discovered, others continue. If one supplier fails, the market does not necessarily empty. Redundancy can protect illegal distribution more effectively than a spectacular piece of fixed infrastructure. The federal file closes. Beside it, the map still shows the real freight tunnels downtown and the real basement rooms in uptown. Capone's business occupies the city around them, but no documented line joins all three. The next chapter therefore follows the product rather than the legend. How did liquor move when it did not have one secret highway? Imagine the city's illicit alcohol trade without a single center, along the water arrival points and short transfers. On roads are trucks, automobiles, and ordinary vehicles whose usefulness comes from looking like traffic. Elsewhere, alcohol can be produced within or near the market it serves. Warehouses, garages, backrooms, cellars, service entrances, and private spaces provide temporary storage. From them, smaller quantities continue toward many sellers and customers. No one line carries the whole burden. This is not as visually neat as a tunnel highway. It is a web, and much of the web uses the same surfaces as legal life. A vehicle can move among thousands of vehicles. A package can pass through an ordinary door. A seller can hide stock without connecting to another building. A delivery can use an alley, loading area, kitchen entrance, or shared service space without requiring a tunnel under the city. The dry law itself made transportation one part of a broader prohibited chain. Manufacture, sale, movement, import, and export interacted. The practical response was therefore varied. Different suppliers, neighborhoods, buildings, and moments created different routes. Chicago's market was dispersed. A hidden bar did not need access to one master artery if it could receive goods through smaller local chains. A delivery entering in street level might still become concealed in its final yards. Curtains, schedules, trusted staff, rear entrances, ordinary containers, and storage arrangements could make the transition discreet. This brings us back to the user's original fascination, the movement from a dark route into a legitimate storefront. That transition almost certainly mattered as a task. Illegal goods had to cross from transport into storage and sale, but a practical need does not tell us which architectural tool solved it at every location. In one building, a basement stair may suffice. In another, a service lift. Somewhere else, an alley door after closing. A connected basement could help locally. None of these short concealed movements proves a continuous citywide tunnel. The difference resembles the distinction between a street system and a private hallway. Many journeys use streets, then enter buildings through separate doors. We will now call all the hallways one highway simply because packages pass through them. Prohibition logistics could likewise combine large-scale movement with many small building-level solutions. Distributed routes also offer resilience. A single fixed tunnel controlled by one organization would create power, but it would also create dependence. Discover the entrance, block the line, or lose access to a connected property, and a large portion of the system becomes vulnerable. A varied market can redirect. Its inefficiency is part of its survival. You can picture it like several quiet side streets around one blocked avenue. Slower to map, but much harder to close all at once. This is why the real answer can feel less theatrical and more intelligent. The liquor trade did not require the city to excavate one criminal mirror of its streets. It could inhabit the ordinary city selectively. Water, roads, basements, doors, storage rooms, and commercial habits already supplied opportunities. Criminal logistics borrowed the surface rather than replacing it. Return to our crate. At the beginning, we carried it along one amber line from the leg toward the loop. Now the crate's path branches. It might arrive by one route, pause in one place, transfer to another vehicle, enter a building through a service access point, and finish in a cellar. Another crate could follow an entirely different sequence. The map becomes crowded with short movements. They are difficult to turn into one legend because no single route owns the story. There is no grand subterranean command post. There are repeated practical choices made across a city-wide informal market. And yet the most dramatic claims remain on our evidence table. They are the armed checkpoints and steel-reinforced trapdoors, followed by hidden levers and pipes carrying gin. Then comes the deadly wrong turn, along with millions of dollars said to move below ground. Each deserves a direct verdict. Lay the claims in a row beneath the lamplight. The first is the checkpoint. In the imagined highway, armed guards occupy soot-stained junctions and prevent rival gangs from hijacking shipments. It is a vivid image because it turns a quiet tunnel into controlled territory. But a checkpoint is more than a mood. It has a location, traffic to monitor, workers or guards to staff it, and a route important enough to defend. The targeted record does not supply that post. No verified subterranean checkpoint can be placed on our map. No supported guard station links Capone's organization to the downtown freight network or the Green Mill basement. The image returns to the realm of dramatization. The second claim is the hidden lever. A lever seems plausible beside railways, elevators, shafts, and freight equipment because genuine infrastructure contains controls. But the story asks the lever to do more than operate ordinary machinery. It must reveal a concealed passage into a legitimate storefront as part of a criminal network. The documented freight interfaces are practical rail connections, chutes, shafts, and elevators. The Green Mill hatch leads to storage. Basement doorways connect local units. No verified chain of Capone-controlled mechanical entrances appears. The third claim is liquor moving through pipes. Pipes feel perfectly suited to concealment. Liquid can travel while containers remain out of sight. But no reliable support in this investigation places illicit gin in a hidden Chicago tunnel pipeline. The image is efficient, memorable, and unsupported. The fourth claim turns a wrong turn into life or death. Prohibition. Chicago could be dangerous, and organized crime was not gentle. Yet using that general danger to make every tunnel junction lethal creates a specific scene without a source. No verified route means no verified fatal decision point within it. The threat must leave the narration. The fifth claim attaches millions of dollars to tunnel traffic. Capone's criminal business involves substantial illicit income. That financial fact is real. What is missing is the accounting bridge that assigns a measurable portion to shipments through a tunnel highway. Without a tunnel ledger, route record, or reliable operational testimony, business revenue cannot be converted into underground throughput. One by one, the props disappear. Notice what remains on the table. What remains is a real freight railway about 40 feet down, carrying documented commercial cargo through a large downtown network. Its building connections served hidden freight work, and its northern limit rested at Superior Street. The Green Mill still offers a real hatch, basement, connected local rooms, and a concrete wall. Finally, records establish an illicit alcohol enterprise operating within a distributed market that required concealment. The investigation has not emptied the story. It has sorted it. This is the promised three-part map beginning to settle into focus. Solid lines mark the freight system and its ordinary purposes. Dotted marks surround isolated possibilities that cannot be promoted to established operations. Erased lines remove claims contradicted by geography or left without the minimum route evidence. The most important erased line is the continuous path from the lakefront through the loop to the green mill under Capone's control. The route has now faced its strongest tests. No specific Capone-linked underground segment, guarded post, or controlled basement handoff emerges as established history. The careful conclusion is not that no hidden delivery ever entered any Chicago basement. That would go beyond the record in the opposite direction. The conclusion is narrower and stronger. The underground highway in our opening has no verified chain of places, structures, and handoffs. Now only one question remains. If the line was never securely drawn, why does it feel as if Chicago remembers it? The answer waits in the many different cities beneath the city. Place 5 transparent maps on the table. On the first are the deep freight tunnels beneath downtown, with their rails, junctions, commercial connections, and engineered vertical interfaces. On the second are sidewalk vaults, building spaces extending beneath the pavement, close enough to the public street to feel like passages under the city. On the third are basements and doorways between adjoining commercial units, local and practical, changing as tenants and buildings change. On the fourth are transit passages used by passenger systems with their own routes and entrances. On the fifth are storm and utility spaces built for water or services rather than freight or people. Viewed separately, each layer has boundaries. Viewed together in dim light, they become one underground Chicago. A person remembers a tunnel beneath downtown. Another remembers a hatch behind a bar. Someone else has seen a connected cellar, a sealed doorway, or a passage under a sidewalk. The details travel easily because they share materials and sensations: brick, concrete, damp air, pipes, steel, darkness, and the awareness of traffic moving overhead. Then Capone's name enters. He supplies motive, organization, secrecy, money, and a famous era. The underground spaces supply architecture. The human mind performs the connection. This does not require deliberate deception. Stories often grow through honest compression. A complicated explanation loses its boundaries as it is repeated. The freight tunnel becomes the tunnels. A local basement passage becomes part of the network. An association with a neighborhood becomes ownership of a building. An old hatch becomes a prohibition hatch. A possibility becomes something everyone has heard. The city helps. Chicago repeatedly rebuilds itself. Fires, foundations, renovations, new transit, changed streets and altered businesses leave fragments beside newer structures. A sealed opening naturally invites a former destination. A room with no obvious current use invites a secret earlier one. When records are harder to reach than the cellar, the physical object leads the story. The tunnel legend, therefore, rests on a genuine historical feeling. Modern cities have hidden systems that sustain the visible surface. Goods, fuel, waste, water, power, transit, and service work travel through spaces most residents rarely see. The knowledge that such systems exist makes a criminal parallel seem reasonable. And criminal businesses do exploit ordinary infrastructure. They use roads, rooms, vehicles, storage, communications, and trusted labor. Sometimes they adapt architecture. The error is not imagining that hidden spaces could be useful. The error is turning usefulness into a specific, verified Capone network without the connecting evidence. This is why the myth can remain valuable after its highway disappears. It directs attention toward the people and systems beneath public life. Freight workers, porters, drivers, building receivers, cleaners, maintenance crews, and others kept the surface city functioning by moving what polite rooms preferred not to display. Coal arrived while ash departed. Merchandise rose through shafts, and parcels crossed invisible thresholds. The real hidden city sustained Chicago through architectural separation. That phrase sounds almost like the bootlegger story, yet its meaning has changed. The deception was not necessarily criminal. It was the ordinary urban trick of presenting a clean storefront while labor, fuel, waste, and freight moved behind and below it. Our maps can now be stacked correctly. The freight layer stays solid beneath downtown. The green mill basement appears as its own local plan. Sidewalk faults, transit, and storm infrastructure receive separate colors. Capone's documented business remains in the history of Prohibition, but no amber highway is allowed to pass through every layer. The picture is less simple and more beautiful. As the final chapter begins, the maps no longer compete. They settle into the city at their proper depths, and the opening question receives its quiet answer. Return once more to the rain-dark pavement. At the beginning, an amber line ran beneath it from the shore toward the loop and north to the doors of a famous bar. Along that line waited checkpoints, trapdoors, levers, and unseen shipments. Now the final map is ready. Did Al Capone really use Chicago's secret tunnels as a connected underground highway? The surviving evidence does not establish that route. Chicago's downtown freight railway was real. It operated by 1906, about 40 feet below the central city. Its operator described nearly 60 miles of track and many freight house and commercial building connections. The documented cargo included parcels, merchandise, coal, and ash. Chutes, shafts, elevators, and rail interfaces allowed the hidden system to serve buildings. But its known northern reach stopped at Superior Street, far south of the Green Mill. The green mills below great spaces are also real. A hatch opens to basement storage. Its chronology may belong to rebuilding after the 1933 fire. Doorways and corridors connect local storefront spaces. In the direction that most invites the longer tunnel story, investigators met a concrete theater foundation, and Capone's illicit alcohol business was real. Federal records established criminal income and the tax case that ended his public power. Yet those records do not supply a tunnel itinerary. Targeted investigations of the Green Mill story found no primary documentary foundation for a specific Capone-used route there. Three true things stood close together in memory. A real hidden railway, a real set of atmospheric basement spaces, a real and notorious liquor enterprise. The legend joined them into a fourth thing, one continuous guarded highway beneath Chicago. That fourth claim is the line we must erase. The erased line carries the checkpoints with it. It carries the mechanical chain of hidden storefront levers, the gin pipes, the lethal wrong turns, and the claim that millions can be measured as tunnel traffic. Those details remain available to fiction and labeled dramatization, but they cannot carry the voice of established history. One modest possibility remains at the edge of the map. Large cities contain undocumented acts. A person could carry an illegal bottle into a basement. A hidden room could store contraband. An ordinary service entrance could be used for an extraordinary purpose. The absence of a verified citywide route cannot prove that no isolated misuse ever occurred. But an isolated possibility is not a highway. The more useful logistical answer is distributed. Prohibition alcohol moved through varied routes, vehicles, waterways, local production, ordinary service spaces, cellars, and many handoffs within a dispersed market. Concealment could happen in the final yards without requiring one subterranean artery. This changed answer gives the city back its scale. Instead of one organization controlling a secret duplicate of Chicago, many forms of movement overlap. Legal commerce uses rails beneath the loop. Buildings use shafts and service rooms. Illegal sellers borrow roads, stores, storage, and trusted relationships. Nightclubs use basements for the same practical reason other businesses do. Public rooms are only part of a building. The legend made these systems dramatic by placing them under one famous name. History makes them interesting by separating them again. You can let the map recede now. The lake becomes a soft, dark margin. The loop dims block by block. Superior Street remains a small, precise endpoint. Farther north, the Green Mill hatch closes over an ordinary storage room. The concrete wall holds its place without needing to guard a secret. Below downtown, the freight tracks remain. A small electric motor rests in the cool depth. Narrow cars wait beside the platform. Above them, the city grows quiet, unaware of how much ordinary work once passed through the clay beneath its streets. This was the hidden city that truly sustained the surface. Not a perfect criminal highway, but a commercial machine of rails, chutes, shafts, elevators, porters, operators, receivers, parcels, coal and ash. Its practical invisibility gave later stories a believable home. Its real darkness lent atmosphere to roots the surviving map could not support. There is something gentle in that final exchange. We began by looking for a more dangerous city beneath Chicago. We found a more industrious one. We began with guards at soot-stained checkpoints. We end with workers completing quiet handoffs. We began with secret levers opening into illicit storefronts. We end with ordinary building interfaces designed to keep freight away from crowded streets. And we began with Capone's shadow covering every underground room. We end with boundaries, downtown and uptown, railway and basement, income record and route record, possibility and proof. Those boundaries do not weaken the past. They allow each real thing to keep its own shape. The amber line has faded from the map. The verified rail line remains. Rain continues softly above the pavement, and somewhere beneath the sleeping loop, the blue clay holds the outline of a city that needed no legend to be remarkable. You may leave the map there. The hatch is closed. The lost freight car is still. The lamplight grows lower, and Chicago, above and below, can rest.